So, Dr. Julian, we are live. You can go ahead and start us off. You can't see them. Just a minute. Just a minute.
I can see Adrian, and I can now see Gagik.
Perfect.
We are good to go?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you're good to go.
Gagik, welcome to this forum. Adrian, we are really happy to have you. We are very humbled that you honored us with our request to join us for this conversation. But before we start, I'd like to give Paul a few minutes to just very briefly tell us about ABYA and what we're about. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, our guest speakers, our viewers. My name is Paul Makolaka, co-founder and executive director of Africa Blockchain Youth Ambassadors, or ABYA. ABYA is a Pan-African initiative created to promote literacy and adoption of blockchain, Web3, and cryptocurrency in Africa through awareness, knowledge, skills, and application among university students. The reason why our focus on the youth is informed by the fact that Africa's youth make up a significant proportion of the population, but they are often left out of the formal economy and lack access to opportunities. This lack of access prevents them from thriving, resulting in high levels of unemployment and poverty, as well as social and political marginalization. And as a result, Africa cannot reach its full potential. The youth are the future leaders of the continent, and if given the opportunity, they have the potential to become change makers. By investing in Africa's youth with future-proof skills, networking opportunities, and other programs, we are not only empowering individuals, but also benefiting society as a whole. These young people have the potential to make a real difference in the world, and we are proud to supporting them on their journey. Over to you, Dr. Julian.
Thank you very much, Paul. My name is Dr. Julian Rower. I'm the Director of Strategy and Quality Assurance at African Blockchain Youth Ambassadors, also known as ABYA. I consider myself a scholar practitioner, really enjoy bridging the gap between theory and practice, having just very recently earned my doctorate from the University of Liverpool. I enjoy very intense conversations in a very likable environment. A big enthusiast of blockchain technology, and the other hat that I wear is that of the CEO of Shajuls Business and Managing Consultancy in Kenya, an outfit that intervenes in the workplace-based problems. Today, we are discussing under the banner of blockchain, the question of stakeholders, capitalism, and sustainability. Our viewers, Paul, this is a new window I'm not very conversant with, but I believe there will be a place where our viewers can put in their comments and their questions for our further review when the main conversation is done with. And at some point, you'll tell us where that is. But let me very quickly read the bio. Gagik and Adrian, I did complain to my executive director that the profile was very thin in content for people that I know have immense experience in the field that you want to discuss. Today, you'll allow us just to make it as brief as we still dig more information on who you are about. But I have checked on you too, and I can tell our viewership that we have a very powerful panel. Adrian Wands, where are you calling us from?
I'm actually calling from South Africa,
From
Cape Town, because that's where I actually live. I don't know if you knew that, but I'm living in South Africa since 2 years because my partner, she's South African, and then we do a lot of climate projects in South Africa. But originally, as you can hear, from Germany.
Okay. I've been to Cape Town. I love Cape Town. Cape Town is a beautiful town. And sometimes in the future, hopefully, we will tie up maybe in Nairobi or Cape Town. So Adrian, by way of introduction, is the co-founder and the CEO of Senken. He's also the director of the Competence Center for Sustainable Innovation at the University of Digital Science, USD Berlin. Gagik, for the purposes of our viewers, where are you calling from?
Yeah, I am probably the only outsider from Africa. I'm calling from Armenia, and I have a very good friend, classmate in South Africa. I should introduce you to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh,
I would have to check Armenia in the map. I'm not very good in geography, but I'm
well,
aware.
let's start with a very long story. We are the first Christian nation, and I live in a village, very tiny village where Armenian kings are buried, and so on and so on. There is many stories. Uh,
Interesting.
so it is a pleasure to be on this panel and to contribute. I hope this is not the only chance. We will continue our cooperation. So I think we all already discussed that there are more to come. So happy to be on the panel.
Fantastic. Gagik is a council member and the co-founder of Public, with the Q at the end, Foundation. He is also the co-founder of Blockchain R&D Hub and the co-chair at Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs. Let's dive into the conversation of the day. And I'll start with you, Gagik. You are co-founder and council member of Public. What is Public, very briefly?
In two words, it is the Internet of Creators, where we give all the power to the users, making them owners of their space. So I think that would be the shortest definition of public.
Fantastic. Still with you, Gagik. You are also co-chair, International Harvard Alumni Entrepreneur. What is that about? Again, very briefly.
This is, oh, sorry. Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs is a group of over now, I think maybe 15,000 graduates, alumni in all continents. So we have chapters beginning from Japan to I would not say Alaska, but many chapters in the US.
Yeah.
Our goal is to support alumni and also our communities with our knowledge. So there is lots of mentorship programs that we have, entrepreneurship programs. There is an accelerator that we offer to our members, and there are many programs that we do across many continents. I helped establish the Japan chapter, and was very active in China and many other locations as well. So it's a very active group of people thinking about sustainability, thinking about the future of the world, and of our community as well.
Fantastic. So one more question to you, Gagik, before I go back to Adrian. In an article I pulled out online, Internet of Creators, it speaks of reshaping the world in a fairer way, with the public seeking to start a new era where creators are put first and forward and fairly rewarded. Expound on that very briefly. And from here, I'm having in mind the question of capitalism that comes with blockchain. But tell us, when you say artists or creators first and fairly rewarded, what is this about?
Well, as you can see, this is a fundamental project that me and my partners have engaged for the past 6 years or so. It has started much earlier, but blockchain helped us to capitalize on many ideas that we had.
Yeah.
And we we are we are part of the media industry for a very long time, and we have seen this balance in the world in terms of the contribution and the reward that you know creators are getting. Let's call them creators, not just artists or content writers or whoever. So we wanted to create a space that all the creators could own where the wealth generated by all would be fairly distributed based on the contribution of each.
Okay.
And the original idea to give ownership, which would be instant, and everyone would get a fair share of the pie, again, based on the contribution and on merit. So I'm happy to say that we realized this goal. I think public is probably the only blockchain that I know that has a real world implication and impact in terms of the way it approaches the wealth distribution, approaches fairness, um, uh, and together, I think this is we will go into technology discussion, but I think overall, I always give this example. YouTube, for example, um, has 38 million channels, and to my knowledge, they monetize only 1% fairly, let's say. And the rest of the channels are deprived from monetization and from user-generated, content. YouTube is moving into more Netflix type, content provision and so on. So if you take public and put on YouTube, then every single contributor would get like a contribution or get payment, instant payment every 10 minutes for all the views that they would generate in the aggregate number of views that YouTube would have. And this would bring probably 6 to 10 times more revenue to everyone, including YouTube, because by demonetizing and demotivating the participants, you don't get their energy to build something new. So they start not investing and not believing into the. So I just had a discussion, many discussions. People, they don't know how they are paid and when they are paid and so on and so on. So I bring this example to show the difference. One-time payment a month through 6 channels, or 10 minutes payment through directly to your wallet every 10 minutes based on your viewership, and that it is fair, that whatever you got, you have paid, you have been paid. And then we can extend it to to the other discussion. I think I don't want to take too much floor.
Okay. Very, very, very well put and very well articulated. Adrian, I'll spend some time with you now. As a director, Competence Center for Sustainable Innovation, University of Digital Science, UDS Berlin, what is the mandate of the university and what is your role?
Yeah, it started a little bit when I was at Ernst & Young before, and I was leading the blockchain department for Ernst & Young Germany, and I left EY, and I was like, hey, what I realized really often in corporates, but even in venture capital companies, is that there's no structure in place to actually foster sustainable innovation. So innovation that has a social impact, that has an environmental impact, because maybe just the structure of the fund of a venture capital company is not set up to actually incentivize these kind of innovations. They're maybe incentivized to found the 50th food delivery service no one needs, rather than actually having a real impact. And with that basically thesis, we went out and said okay, let's do some research to figure out what kind of structures do we need in order to implement incentives into companies, but also in venture capital funds, in order to actually have an impact. And that's how we started. Now I'm basically just a managing director and leading, or doing a lot of brainstorming with the research assistants and so on. But since my own startup then took off, really quickly, I can't spend too much time on the research institute at the moment.
Okay. Very, very interesting. I'll push my button a little bit on the same role that you're doing. I was looking at your banner on one of your LinkedIn portals, and it said, saving our planet by making climate finance accessible for everyone. My question is, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's broad. It's broad, but it basically started. I did a lot of research in Southern Africa, like South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and I interviewed a lot of farmer. I interviewed a lot of small holders or small holdings, and I interviewed a lot of communities which actually have a lot of natural capital, and they even have the land to start even more nature or nature conservation projects, but the access to capital is limited.
Oh,
Then on the other side of the world, in the northern hemisphere, suddenly we see an uprise in carbon markets. And carbon markets are actually a tool to fund carbon projects, so climate projects. So there's one unit traded called carbon credit, and one carbon credit stands for 1 ton of CO2 avoided or sequestered out of the air, out of the atmosphere. So on the one hand, you have a market which actually funnels money into these projects, and has actually a problem to find projects they can fund. And on the other hand, I interviewed a lot of people in Southern Africa, and they would all love to start these projects. And at this point, we were like, hey, we need to make this process as transparent and as easy as possible, so that on the one hand, you have maybe a community which wants to implement maybe new cook stoves, or they maybe have a community forestation project, and they need the funding for it. And this process should be really easy. It should be really transparent. And yeah, for that, when I heard this problem coming up, hey, there's no transparency at the moment, a lot of transaction costs, a lot of intermediaries at the moment, a lot of the money is lost in the value chain. And I was just like, I mean, I come from the blockchain space. I was like, yeah, this is a good application to look into blockchain, and that's what we're doing now. We're trying to create an open market to connect, on the one hand, climate projects with, on the other hand, mostly corporates which want to invest into carbon projects all over the world.
great. Thank you so much for that clarification. My last question to you before I go to Gagik. In every organized project or in every organized initiative, there are stakeholders. When we are looking at blockchain as a concept, and you can add in crypto there, and we are thinking stakeholding, who are these? In your view, from where you sit, who are the stakeholders in this platform that we should be aware of?
It's a lot of stakeholders, because if you start a climate project, I was also just in Senegal 3 weeks ago for 1 week, visiting a couple of communities. If you start a climate project, and for there were 2 climate projects we want to start. The one is a mangrove, already starting. The one is a mangrove project where they plant the mangrove trees, and the same community around these mangroves also having new cook stoves, because at the moment they're cutting down the mangroves to fire their stoves. And with new enhanced cook stoves, they have to cut down only 1/10 of the mangroves as before. So just looking at this simple project, how many stakeholders are involved? So of course you have to work with the government to get the allowance for them to actually start working on the project. Then of course you need to involve the community. because the community needs to have equity in this project. They need to be completely involved, and they also need to, if there's money coming into these projects, they need to participate in that. And then you have these two. Then, of course, you have the experts. So we're working in Senegal with the University of Ziguinchor. You need to have the experts actually knowing how much CO2 actually gets sequestered. Like, how do you know if you plant a mangrove, how much CO2 actually gets taken out of the air? So you need the matter experts. So in this case, the university. Then you need, again, you need, of course, on the other hand, someone who funds the project, who finances the project. And this could be corporates, but it also could be like development agencies, like, for instance, from Germany, GIZ, or the French Development Agency. But it also could be an institutional investor who sees carbon credit as an investment. And then, of course, us as like a technology provider. And yeah, you see, I think there are also a couple of small stakeholders, but I think these are the big stakeholders. So the more stakeholders, the more complex it is. So it's not that easy to start a project like that.
Very interesting. So let me hear from Gagik now. Adrian did mention government is one of those stakeholders, and part of their stakeholding could be also by way of regulation. Gagik, just your thoughts around this. Are government and regulators stakeholders? Depending on your answer, how?
Yeah, in one of my writings, I suggest to change the word government into servicemen. So in that sense, I think they are stakeholders, because it depends on the community how you approach the government, but that's what you elect, and you put into service to provide the service. And I was part of the government of Armenia at one point, almost many years ago, and I started Armenian Development Agency. It was one main point of entering into the country. And my idea was that definitely we should be of service to the investment community and to the rest. We even in public we thought of a new way of to collect and pay taxes on the revenue that everyone is generating, and this could serve even as a model for the global taxation at one point. Adrian and I are sharing the same background from Anderson EY, and Paul Brody probably, we had many discussions with him about blockchain, and I met the blockchain team of EY, and I'm still working with EY, so I have many friends there. But going back to government, I believe that I would call it inclusiveness, which is missing. So I think there should be no monopoly of any faction of the society. Everyone should be included. Well, when you speak about institutions, I think they have certain roles to play, and depending on that role, they should be included. You mentioned regulatory aspect of it, and for public, why we started public and why we went to blockchain, I couldn't find a location in the world where I could implement a project where I could give instant share to millions of people. There is no location in the world which would allow you to do that, like changing your shares, registering them, and knowing that you are an owner, and every single minute your share is changed. So this brought us to really go into finding a new solution. And even after creating public, I realized that there is no space for public in this world. So I think you are broadening the discussion into, if you speak about regulation, I would say my understanding of regulation is probably governance rather than regulation, that the new community, public community, can implement within its own domain. Once you have all the owners, I think they can really go on and on, in building many things that really can help them build a better society in the world. So, yeah, I would say that the idea of public is to have everyone as a stakeholder, including developers, including we have like native storage, distributed storage embedded into public. So providers of the storage place are also part of the stakeholders of public ecosystem. Creators, distributors, everyone who participates, who contributes to value creation, they are our stakeholders. And we don't change the world per se. We make it a better place in a sense that we bring fairness and inclusiveness. So from that sense, I think we want to see everyone part of it.
Interesting you say that. So let me bring a twist to that, Gagik. We are talking about a space that is democratic. We are talking about a space that is transacting peer-to-peer. We are talking about a space that is trying to remove the central agencies that do the intermediation. But we are still looking at government as a key stakeholder in the entire ecosystem. Just make us understand, there's a bit of a contradiction here. The philosophy of blockchain speaks about peer-to-peer, but we are taking in government as a key stakeholders, maybe for the purposes of governance. I know you've alluded to it in a way, but again, I'd just like to pick your thoughts around that. What is the right way to look at it?
Again, I think coming from the point of view of proper governance, people who are elected to really represent communities, I think from that standpoint, everyone has a job to do. And there are many aspects where really you need some sort of regulation. For example, we have freedom of free speech and everything that we embedded in the technology. But when you go into different domains, for example, fraudulent content, hate speech, and so on, then every publisher who is on public has to take responsibility, and they have to look into the laws and regulations that the societies have created for their own benefit. So in that sense, I would say that I see partnership rather than dictatorship and whatever you call it. From the standpoint of, I think we need to really understand what are the discrepancies that we have in our societies. For example, you can implement new laws. The main idea is to create the owners, civil society that can take ownership of their destiny, and public technology can help mobilize people to take that, ownership, to become owners. I always bring example. Everyone is calling public, like in the beginning, we had like these calls that public is a real solution for fake news. And I'm always asked this question, whether public really can solve this issue. And my answer is yes and no. The yes part comes with the notion that once you have owners in space, they take real action, and they start cleaning the space. And I always bring the example of Japan. I love Japan. It is one of the cleanest places in the world because of people taking ownership, going from kindergarten to corporations. Once they finish the job, they go to streets, they clean up, and so on. You don't find anywhere to put a trash. But there is one small street in Tokyo where you would immediately recognize you are in that street, and it's called Roppongi. Maybe you have been there. So it's a place where there are pubs and clubs and so on. It's a very small part where they allow nightlife and everything, and it's like polluted. In the very clean city, you have one space which is polluted. So I would say that once you have real ownership, people will start taking real action. When they are deprived from the ownership of their everything, country, their homes and everything, then you look into someone to do your job, and usually it's a lousy job done, no matter who does the job for you. So I think that would be the place where I would take the notion of government, because I understand your question the other context of your question, regulation. We even wanted to register public in space, because public itself is a planet where you can have all your rules, and you create everything, you distribute, everyone can be part of it, and it is a virtual. It doesn't exist on the land. It's a virtual network where everyone can participate. Of course, they lend the money and whatever they have on their wallets to go buy something, but there is no space that anyone can control public. It's all decentralized, distributed everywhere. So, in that sense, I think it can serve as a model, concept-wise. And I always call. We can go more. I think I would like to leave some space for
But very, very, very well put. So what we'll do at this point, we'll invite my executive director, Paul, to give us a message from the sponsor. Then we proceed from there. Paul, over to you.
Enterprise blockchains have limitless potential, but privacy is a major challenge. How can businesses secure their private transactions on a public network, especially when enterprise blockchains have been closed, unaudited, centralized? Introducing Polygon Nightfall, designed for the needs of enterprises. Nightfall uses a hybrid approach to scaling to give enterprises an option that was considered impossible. ZK rollups keep transactions private on a public network. Optimistic rollups offer efficient, scalable transactions. Secured by Ethereum, Nightfall means trust, transparency, and credibility. Aiming to disrupt the $50 trillion global supply chain industry, Polygon Nightfall unlocks the true potential of enterprise blockchains and empowers businesses to connect and scale in powerful new ways. Polygon Nightfall. Mainnet beta is now live.
I think it's something happened. Actually, we are trying this platform for the very first time, so I think there's a bit of technical itch there.
But you can just make mention about our sponsors for a few minutes, and then we proceed.
Okay. So for our viewers who are watching this for the very first time, I'd just like to take this opportunity to appreciate Polygon. Polygon is a layer 2 blockchain that aims to help Ethereum with its scalability. By acting as a layer 2 protocol, Polygon doesn't aim to duplicate Ethereum's functionality. Instead, it helps improve transaction speeds and lower costs for developers. Polygon is one of our partners who believe in what we are doing to empower university students in Africa. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Julian.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Adrian, I'm coming to you, but before I do, I have one more question for Gagik. Gagik, I'd like you to very quickly talk to me through capitalism in this space. What does capitalism look like? In one of your publications, you've spoken about creators are put first and forward. It gives the impression that everybody wins. Is capitalism as a concept resident in the blockchain space?
I think this is more philosophical discussion.
No problem.
The practical implication is public. Q stands for quantum, for public. So my piece of contribution to this would be: imagine we have more or less two systems now. One is centralized, one is corporate. Corporate we can call capitalism, and the centralized is like centralized countries that are run from the government like standpoint. So I distinguish the control level. So if the government has like 90% of control on its hands, and then on corporation level you have like 70% or 50% control in corporations' hands. So this gives about 50 times more productivity in the domains that employ this either centralized way of organizing their living, or through corporate world. Current capitalism, as I see it, is dehumanized. There is no human being behind corporations anymore. And I think it is taking very ugly, face now. In that the globalization has enabled few giants that are now controlling beyond, border and governments and the states. They are usurping the space of the entire world, and this is I think this creates a major threat to many things. So to me, there should come a new new era where the P2P would lead to creation of the public economy. Some of my scholar friends call it rational economy. You name it. But I think, to my understanding, the public economy has like 100 or 1,000 times more productivity because of the level of control which is lifted, and the single unit of the society, human being, is empowered in a way that they can really take both ownership and action. So once you engage, you come to full inclusiveness and give up people power and ability to trust, to interact and work with each other, then you really can harness this power and become like another society. So imagine we have so many issues with climate, with health, you name it. With public economy, the humankind can create so much, power and wealth that we don't need to think about things like that. I think we will be able to solve these issues and really start addressing space, going out of our frame to maybe new spaces that we are not. I think you see some implementation of public economy, few places in the world, especially China, which has really lifted its control for the people, and like printing money, giving it to people, and letting them, do whatever you want. I had a meeting in Chengdu, in Sichuan, with head of the Economic Development Bureau, who was trying to implement blockchain to really control what is happening with the funding that they are giving every year, just in Chengdu, to 500,000 small businesses that apply for this. And this is like, widespread. And you see the development of the economy from, let's say, ground zero to the level where you have like a billionaire born in every three days. But I think that model really proves capable. When you really empower people, you can really have outstanding results in economic value that they can create for themselves. So I would say that my stake in capitalism is it is busted, and if we continue in a way that we are with everything, I think it comes from value, where the value really stands for, like in the capital world, what we are striving for as human beings, why we are living. And I think we are creating, we are in danger in terms of not giving opportunity for our kids to have a decent future because of what we are doing with everything based on the consumerism, the way the capitalism acts. I deliberately went to Facebook F8 meeting into every room where they were discussing the development, and they just introduced the way to introduce apps to the Facebook. And Adrian mentioned social responsibility earlier. There was no word of social responsibility. And I have an article on that also on Slog. You're welcome to read it. But I think we are sowing the bench that we are sitting on, everyone that is on this ship called capitalism, because there is no responsibility behind what actions we are taking. And people don't need wars. People don't need poverty. I think there is ability of the world to direct all the power to really bring the poor nations up to the level where they can live and start thinking about different things than a survival on $1 or $2 per day or whatever. I think this and to do this, I think it's a major leadership challenge that requires real mobilization, and technology really can help in that. So,
fantastic. Really, really, really well put. Adrian, I'm still on the question of capitalism. I just want to see whether your thinking is aligned to that of Gagik or you have a different perspective. What does capitalism look like in a democratic peer-to-peer operations model? What does capitalism look like to you?
So I have to bring it a little bit down to what we're doing in our business model, so to say. Means like this whole area around climate and blockchain is actually called regenerative finance. Means like how can we create a financial system and maybe also use parts of capitalism, which basically defines the financial system, but instead of making it extractive, because at the moment capitalism is extractive on social levels, extractive on environmental levels. So how can we basically recreate or implement incentives in order to make it actually regenerative, so that the financial system actually, the more it gets used, gives back to environment. So for instance, different kind of things like that you, for instance, in every kind of transaction that happens, you bring in royalty in this financial carbon market, you bring in royalties that actually go back to communities, that actually start new projects, social or environmental. So for me, it's all about like, how can we use a system that has been like used over the last centuries, and make a couple of tweaks, because especially for environmental space, we don't have that much time. So we don't have time to change the system completely. We don't have, and that would take probably a long time. And as I see with the blockchain space, in 2017, I started the blockchain department for EY. And I still remember I had always this slideshow saying like, in 3 years, every corporate will have a wallet. In 3 years, every person will only transact with wallets. And 5 years later, we see where we are. So like transitions always happening way slower than we expect, but the climate change happens quicker than we expect. So we basically have to find a way in between. So we can't change the system completely, because this would probably take us way more than 10 or 20 years. So we have to figure out how can we make a couple of tweaks. And this is what also regenerative finance for me is about. Like, how can you maybe even build up treasuries of states, and instead of having gold and currencies on it, you maybe have nature-backed assets on it, and all these kind of things. Like, how can you think about like capitalism, and how can you actually tweak it to have an impact, regenerative impact on the world? And that, for me, this is where my thinking is mostly based, and also like with the business of Zenken and the space we're moving in.
Thank you so much for that, Adrian. That's a very good and different perspective. Now, I'd like us to spend the last couple of minutes discussing sustainability. And Adrian, of course, I'll start with you. When we are talking about sustainability in the space of blockchain, what should come to mind? I know you have mentioned bits and pieces in the part of the conversations you have already heard, but if now we are to take it away as a lesson for us, when we look at sustainability, what should come to mind? Adrian?
So also when I started in the blockchain space, I think like 2015, everyone was always talking about that climate and sustainability is the perfect use case for blockchain. But somehow there was never any kind of good application that actually got used a lot. So only over the last year, we actually see that application in the sustainability space are actually evolving quicker and actually also get used. So if we think about like what comes to mind is I think a lot of problems at the moment with sustainability is about transparency. It's about like the climate catastrophe is actually a coordination problem. And if we look at all these facts, then for me, it's quite clear that one part of the solution could be blockchain technology, because it's basically solving these things, because blockchains are a coordination tool and they bring a lot of transparency. And that's what I think is missing at the moment. And that's the reason blockchain can be part of the solution.
Great, Adrian. But tell us, what kind of incentivization would you recommend or are you aware of that can help in this cause towards sustainability? How do we incentivize the players?
Yeah, so I think a carbon market makes a lot of sense. In carbon market, what does it actually mean is like, hey, there are a lot of polluters in the world who basically, through capitalism, we just talked about, are extractive of the resources we have in the world. So if you have a market which basically tries to bring equilibrium to the atmosphere, or balance to the atmosphere, and creating a market where on one hand you have a price of carbon credits and the CO2 that gets sequestered through carbon credits, that basically on one hand can incentivize corporates to lower their footprint, because the price to actually having a CO2 footprint becomes too high. For instance, if you think about, hey, the ton of CO2 is, let's say, $100. Then for corporates, they would really quickly reduce their footprint as quickly as possible, because if you think of like big corporations which have like more than 1 million tons of CO2 footprint a year, if suddenly on their balance sheet, which is since a lot of them are publicly traded, if suddenly on the balance sheet every year they would have to pay like, let's say, 10 million, 100 million of euros, then they are driven by the shareholders to lower their footprint. So of course you can't lower your footprint from one year to the other. So in order to get to the state where maybe the footprint is close to zero, you will never get it to zero. You can facilitate that by buying these carbon credits from the market, which are basically funding carbon projects, climate projects around the world. And I think this, for me, is one thing that's really important, or can actually drive that change. On the other hand, of course, you should implement things like royalties, because even if there's speculation going on, which is not completely bad, it drives up the price of CO2. There should be royalties implemented, that the communities actually have equity in the work they did on the ground. That always, when there's a trade coming back, actually money gets funneled back to the communities.
Great. Very, very well put. My last question to you on sustainability before I go to Gagik. Protecting the environment is our responsibility, and it's our job. And you've put it very well, how organizations can be incentivized to support that venture. But my question to you is, how does this get policed? How do we police the world to make sure that we do not have rogue organizations doing the untoward to the detriment of the environment? How do we do the policing? In your view, in your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, you're touching a question where, on one hand, of course, governments trying to find a way forward since the Kyoto Protocol in 1997, and then with the Paris Agreement since 2016. I can share my own opinion on that. I think it's not straightforward, because you have a lot of governments actually having, of course, different views on how the projects that are happening on their land are actually get policed. But I think looking at different markets out there, I think it definitely makes sense to get more regulation on corporates actually having to participate in the carbon market rather than having it voluntarily. So at the moment, the market I'm with my company is the voluntary carbon market. And as the name puts it, it's still voluntary to participate in it. So we see that more and more it gets regulated. For instance, the aviation industry with the CORSIA carbon market, which actually gives certain kind of policies on what kind of credits they have to buy and how they have to reduce their footprint over time with science-based targets. And this is like step forward. You get regulated, but still the underlying assets that come from the voluntary market. This is the one thing. And then policies in general, I mean, they are currently negotiated under the Paris Agreement in the COP in the UN climate conference this year in Egypt. And step by step, we're getting there, but it's really difficult because all the governments, of course, have their own thing to say. And now there's a lot of confusion around. You have national carbon markets, you have international carbon markets, you have carbon markets that are only happening over continents, like, for instance, in the EU with the European Emission Trading System. So it's a really complex system. So the policy making is really, really hard.
Amazing. Very, very well put. Gagik, I'm throwing this question to you. Blockchain will come with blockchain will come with its challenges. Climate change is becoming a big issue. How do we enforce compliance?
Very good question. I was going to talk about sustainability. Now we are back to compliance.
Compliance and sustainability.
I think I would say that my understanding is blockchain is a technology.
Yeah.
It's just a ledger, nothing more. It's just a ledger with the collective memory of all participants who has this ledger. And we can't put on blockchain all we are trying to put everything on someone we elect to do the job for us.
Yeah.
It is the same that we do, now we hope that there will be, a technology that will solve all our problems. It is not going to happen. And same way as it is not going to happen that we wait for the governments, the organization that we create, they are going to solve the problem of the climate and so on and so on. I think there are some more fundamental issues that we need to really understand and take action on. And it's a major, really, leadership challenge. And I would bring it back to the ownership matter. Unless we are owners of this planet, nothing will change, to my understanding. I remember when I joined Anderson back in '94, there was one very interesting article that I read about the sustainability and the climate and everything I still search for that document. I lost somewhere, but I'm still searching because it was calling for completely different action rather than half actions. So Adrian, I don't believe in half actions because half actions never work. So I was just drawing this. I don't know whether I can show you why.
Yeah, I can see a bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is a circle of the problem. And what you are calling a solution, Adrian, is one of the dots around this circle. So while we are building these dots around to solve the problem gets bigger and eats all the dots and becomes a bigger problem. And then we start building these small dots around it, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until the time when there is no solution. So when I said I don't think that the capitalism itself is sustainable as a system. I believe it is really, we will solve the issue when really everyone gets involved and takes action, real action. I saw 1 million people on the streets of Yerevan at one point. 1 million people, together, going and aiming to get something, whatever, doesn't matter. But I think really, if we just continue not doing our job as human beings, job of being good parents, job of being good citizens, job of doing, so we avoid our work most of the time. I think that's no technology, no government can help us. So I think technology can come to create an environment of trust, and I think blockchain has a huge deliverable there. But over the top should come the action that human beings should take, and I think we have many examples around the world that we can take. It's only that this the dividers that we have don't let us really come together and really solve these issues, which is really solvable. We can, as human beings, we can do that. But I think we need a really cautiousness of a group inhabiting this planet. I think we need to. The rest, I think, is I don't even think how I can go into answering your question, because it's not in my mind.
You've done
I,
it.
compliance, when you speak about compliance, I think China has its own way of imposing compliance. Other countries have their own ways of imposing compliance. I think the many countries that I enjoy thinking in, like Switzerland is doing referendums on every question. There are many. I think the one way we don't learn is not to invent the vehicle again all the time. There are good examples that we can take as countries to really advance. But I would say, over the top, I think we need to find something that should drive us, our thinking. And I have one word for that, which is, I think, everyone has in their mind. I think it's the word happiness. I think if we can make our societies think of one person happiness as like a cornerstone of what we are building everything, then I think we can really construct everything that really can help. So all the other things, profit, whatever, things that are really driving today the world. That's why we have the pollution. That's why we have to find solution to cooperate and to cope, and so on and so on. And at that same moment, you can't go anywhere now. You can't swim in the oceans. You can't, drink the water. And the kids have so many issues. Pollution is everywhere, not in the physical space, but also in all the spaces. So I think we as people, and you called on leaders, future leaders of Africa. So I would say that the kids need to start really thinking, taking ownership of their everything. And I still think we have a hope in the new generation that is coming, that they will be different. But we need to change everything from day one, from kindergarten, our mindset and thinking, and we need to really address the problem rather than playing around the bush. So it's not going to help us, and we see it. Every year we have a new challenge, more and more and more, and it is coming. I think we need really to start thinking what we can. Sorry.
Amazing. Paul, I'm sure we still have 3 more minutes, right, Paul? You are muted.
Yes, we do. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then yeah, you can mute now so that the sound from the background can. Yeah, thank you. So Gagik, I'll ask you the final question for this evening, and I'm looking forward to having you back again, because there's still so much I would like us to unpack. Now, you're talking to young people, and young people would be big consumers of what you have spoken about today. Clearly, you have a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience. If you were to advise your 24-year-old geek, what would you advise them on the backdrop of the knowledge you now
have? Thank you for this question. I think I always try not to advise anyone on anything. I only can share my experience and knowledge. But one thing I can really share to people who are entering the world, you have this opportunity to be anyone you can create. So on my own, I have achieved whatever I was dreaming for, and the world is open to everyone, no matter where you are and no matter where you are coming from. So I would just suggest that you should not be afraid of taking the journey,
have?
and really should dream big, and not only dream but also walk the walk. So if you do the walk, then I think you can achieve whatever you desire. Take it big. You will be there. You have a president of one of the largest or the major country from your country. So I think you know that it is attainable, no matter where you are coming from in the world. I think it is you. You should take the ownership of your destiny. I think that would be my advice. And don't be afraid, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So thank you so much, Giri.
Most important thing, try to find the balance in your life, and always listen to the two guys that you have. The bad guys sometimes don't give you the bad advices. So be listener. I think the most important thing is to be a real listener, because there is so much noise. You need to be, harness the how you call it, you should master the listening skills. I think that can help you, and also be a giver, a baker rather than a taker. So on this, I don't know.
Thank you so
But
much.
this
Thank
is
you
not
so
an
much. Thank you so much. Adrian, you have shared such powerful knowledge today. The question of sustainability is one we can't ignore. It's going to be with us for the rest of our lives and for generations to come. Young people listening to you today may want to gain the same level of insights like you do. What would you advise them? And what kind of resources would you refer them to so that they can better their understanding of the subject we are discussing today, Adrian? Again, it was such a big pleasure hosting you today. I hope you'll invite me to be linked to you on LinkedIn, because I tried that yesterday. It didn't work too well. But back to my question. What would you advise the young person, and what resources would you direct them to so that they can gain the same level of knowledge like you do? And that will be my last question for today.
Yeah, so I keep it short on that. I think for me, it's first of all, you need to ask a lot of questions. If you don't understand something, ask more questions and ask hard questions. And it even sounds a little bit weird, but especially for the climate and Web3 space, I found Twitter actually to be a quite good education source, because there's a lot of of course, that's why I meant you have to ask the questions. Like, you shouldn't believe everything, but there are a lot of thought leaders actually sharing quite good insights on different kind of topics. And for me, over the last year, it has been like one of my major education sources, especially what's happening in the climate space.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you very much, Gagik. It was such a pleasure having this conversation with you today. Paul, these gentlemen must come back, and come back soon. There's still so much we need to unpack. But for the value we have derived from them today, it's invaluable. We appreciate the fact that you took your time off your busy schedules to share your knowledge and know-how with us. For that, we are forever grateful. Paul, I'll give you the last word to say a big asante sana to the gents, as you also thank our viewers for today and those that will view our production thereafter. All over to you.
Both Adrian and Gagik, that was a very wonderful session. We had a very good time. I enjoyed myself listening. And to all our viewers as well, we want to thank you for taking time to listen to this, to be part of this discussion. And definitely, this is not the last time we're having both Adrian and Gagik on this platform. We look forward to having you again on a discussion like this. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. To all our viewers, wherever you're calling from, have a very good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and until we see you next time on Thursday. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, Adrian. Bye, Gagik. Adrian, connect with me. Gagik, I'll drop you a text.